On Thursday, April 30th, we ran part 3 of our sensitive float fishing series, but on that evening, 3 public television stations were holding their auctions. The weekend repeat, 2 stations ran the wrong show, and we had people who wanted to see the third part of that series. So if you've already seen it, I apologize. If you haven't seen it, now's your lucky moment. Part 3 of sensitive float fishing. Looks like a Pac-Man. Waka, 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 waka. It does, but it's called a plummet. This is something that was used in Europe. I haven't seen them in the United States yet until right now, but this is used by anglers who want to set the depth for float fishing, which you can do with jigs and live bait, all kinds of things. But this plummet, this is really cool. You can take it, for example, you're using a teardrop or a hook underneath a float. You can clip the whole thing on that plummet and drop it in the water to find your depth. You take it down to the bottom and then lift it up a little bit so you identify the depth you want, take the plummet, squeeze it, take your bait off or your lure, and you have the depth to set your bobber. One of the accessories that Craig Schaff introduced me to is Float Fishing Specialty Shop. Here's another one. This is also called a plummet?
Yes, this would be if you were using the tiny hooks. You won't damage the barb if you put it in the cork in the bottom.
So you take the barb, put it in the cork.
Yep, you'd run your hook through the top of that eye first, so it wouldn't come off, and then you'd stick it in the bottom.
Stick it down to the bottom, bring it back up once you set your depth, and then just take the hook out. Different kind of plummet than we're used to. We're used to the alligator clip
so
type.
many of those damage your line and damage your hooks that you want something that isn't going to do that.
These accessories for this sensitive float fishing, you see how thin the line is? 1 or 2 pound test line. We have floats, not bobbers, important to Craig at least. And hey, you know, a bobber is something that we consider to be like this type here, called a Dayton float, but it's a bobber. It bobs in the water. These do much more than bob in the water. They actually, for example, Craig, as this is balanced, when a fish comes, and oftentimes they might take it from beneath and lift up.
Exactly. The float will follow that shot no matter where it goes. If it goes sideways, it'll follow it. If it goes down, it goes up. A fish can't move that 1/4 inch without you knowing it.
In fact, I bet you we can show that right here in the tank with this teardrop. I'll drop it in the water and see how that balances. Ice fishermen can use this, and very frankly, we have a lot of trophy fish caught in the summer. But if you move this teardrop and lift it up, look what happens to the float. The float lifts up. That, if you're fishing with one of these in the summer and you see your float lift, you know that a fish grabbed the bait, if you're using a larva or a maggot, lifted it up, and you set the hook because you have a fish down there with that bait and that hook in its mouth. Let's just talk 1 second here before we get into the accessories, Craig, about the virtues of these small hooks. Now, talking about accessories, they have these snelled already.
Exactly. They're all pre-snelled. I wouldn't want to have to tie that knot.
Okay, let's take one of these out here. Well, we'll just leave it in the package. But looking at the snells, the advantage of a hook this small is a fish will suck it in, right? With that little larva.
You won't feel that weight. Okay, we'll only use teardrops if fish are aggressive, but most of the time they're neutral or negative. So we'll go to a small hook, they'll suck that in, they won't feel the weight of that, they'll mouth the bait, and you'll have more time to set that hook.
However, you take no time at all because as soon as they suck it in, the float moves, you set the hook, and catch them where most of the time?
Right in the upper lip.
In the upper lip.
Yep.
Now think about this, folks. When your lure or bait is hanging under the water and a fish sucks it in, it takes it in its mouth this direction. And say it sucks it in 1 inch or 2, when you pull it, that line has to go around the corner, out the fish's mouth, and catches it on the upper lip. And I can vouch for this, Craig, 95% of the time. I don't even recall if I've ever caught a fish on the lower lip. I don't think it's possible.
No, you'll always get them in the upper lip generally.
Always in
or
the
the
upper
side
lip.
of the mouth if they happen to be swimming away to the side.
And people will think, but that hook isn't big enough. You know, you need a big hook to catch a big fish.
Well, so many people will use the 1 pound line, but they won't use the hook to match. You need a small hook. A small hook will hook through the skin. A big hook, you have to go through bone. And you're hurting the fish, plus you're not aiding in catching and releasing them if it's a smaller fish.
And these little teeny hooks caught in the lip, you can fight them, pull them in, take that hook out, and the hook doesn't work loose.
I've caught bass by accident on these when I'm fishing for bluegill, 4 or 5 pound bass, and over a period of time I'm able to land them, and it's just hooked through the lip of skin there.
And it's marvelous because they don't work loose like a larger hook. But let's look at some of the things you have here. Of course, here's the split shot. Most people, if they have a small split shot, they would say it's something like this here. Whoa, got a few of them out. That is a small split shot to most people, right?
That's pretty large by our standards, but
Yeah.
for most people that would be small.
For most people, that's small. Let's crank over here. What size? This is number 8.
That's number 8.
Now, does this correspond with number 8 shot?
Yes, that's exactly a number 8 shot, bird shot that is split.
For you shotgun shooters,
You know,
look at how small that is.
the advantage of small shot is the same as a small hook. It sinks slower. Okay, when you present your bait to your fish, you need it to come in very slow. If I drop a larva in that water, it's going to sink very, very slowly. And if you have a heavy hook or a heavy shot above that, it'll take it in much quicker, and it's going to spook the fish.
That's why some of these small little floats have a very small weight on them. And it
Exactly.
balances it, and it works, and you can detect the fish underneath. Let's see. Let's go to one last device here. Those of you, and I'm interested in this too, the fish aren't biting. You know that they're down there somewhere, but they might not be near you. Okay,
You
now
need to chum them in.
chumming. Chumming is often done by throwing corn in the water, throwing worms, anything to attract the fish in to feed.
You know, I try to keep people away from corn because the fish don't always digest it and it can
Mm-hmm.
kill them. But the maggots are wonderful for chumming. What I do is I take this.
Now, what is this thing called?
This is called a swim feeder. That's the
swim
European
feeder.
name. This is my little maggot chummer, you might want to call it. Just put these little larvae in there.
Now, this is something that the Europeans
This is
developed.
something the Europeans developed. If you want to fish a river or you want to fish deep water for bluegill, let's say you're fishing 30 foot of water and your bluegill are down there, if you chum at 30 foot, you'll have a problem with them spreading out too much. But if you sink this down in your rod and put it down at 20 foot, it'll chum a tighter area.
Okay, we'll just drop this on
Yeah.
the bottom, right?
You know?
Okay, we're going to drop this on the bottom. This is the little chum. Oh, look at that. The
And see
larvae.
how the larva can just crawl right out?
So they crawl out, release themselves at that depth,
Exactly.
attract the fish.
If you're a trout fisherman, you want to chum these, you cast that out on another rod above the hole, it chums the hole for you, just like a hatch, an actual hatch.
Look at that. They work themselves loose, get out through the holes, and attract the fish. And then we hit them with a barrage of small hooks, little maggots, and all types of floats to tell you what's happening. Craig, this is absolutely fascinating. I'm sure there's many other tips we're going to gather from you because we want to go out and try this on walleye. It's what we used to call the European style fishing. Now we call it sensitive
Float fishing.
Something that will become a big part of American fishing.
And most definitely.
Most definitely, and in a good share in this state due
Exactly.
to you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Craig.